to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and after everyone was upset Saturday night as the Philadelphia Union blew a 2-0 lead to FC Cincinnati to earn a point on the night, the Philadelphia Union come from behind against Charlotte, down 2 goals, earn a point on the road, and the whole mentality changes now. This is a huge point, a well-earned point for the Union on the road, and a game that looked dire at times. A game that was pretty slow and boring from the Union's attack. Andre Blake didn't have a whole bunch to do this game. I know he had 4 saves, and we can get into Andre Blake here in a minute. But only a couple moments in this game, right? Did the Union look terrible? And to their credit, they found a way to fight on through and earn a point on the road in a place where they got absolutely blown out down in Charlotte last year, 4-0. I don't have to remind you guys about that, because I wasn't sure what kind of game we were going to get Wednesday night. Were we going to get a lopsided loss once again? Were the Union going to be able to score this time down in Charlotte? And they did. They did score, but they did also give up goals once again, conceding the first goal again on the road. And trust me, we'll get into that. So not a whole bunch to talk about in terms of this game. A couple sound bites I'll play, a couple points I want to make, and then we'll go over 3 stars, and that's it. For people that may be new to the podcast and you've listened to the last couple episodes, we don't do Blunder of the Week for midweek episodes. So if you guys were expecting Blunder of the Week, not this episode. The next episode, absolutely. So get your recommendations in for that episode on Sunday as we review the LAFC game. But this episode, it's going to be all Charlotte. And I guess there's really not a whole bunch to talk about in this game, but we're going to talk about it. And like I've been saying to you guys all season long, if you guys have been watching the Union all season, you guys know exactly what I'm about to bring up. And it's how the Union continue to concede the first goal on the road. I mentioned it in the intro, and it happened again Wednesday night. And I'll ask you guys a question right off the bat. How concerned are you that come playoff time, that this does not look like it's going to be corrected? How concerned are you that the Union are going to concede a goal on the road? Because it's a fact. This is a fact that the Union will have to play a game on the road. Congrats to the Union for clinching their 6th straight playoff berth. And Jim Curtin even said after his game that, yeah, if this was 6 years ago, we're celebrating this. We're having a champagne party in the locker room. But, this is expected of this club now. And winning a game or 2 in the playoffs isn't expected anymore of this club. It's reaching the Eastern Conference Final, fighting for a spot in MLS Cup. That's the expectations for this club, to get to the final of the Eastern Conference and hopefully get back to MLS Cup. And so if you came into the season saying, well, I just hope the Union make the playoffs, well, it's not good enough anymore. Like the Union have to. Every single year, it has to be a goal of this club. They've got to make it to the Eastern Conference Final. And now with the new playoff format, it is a fact that the Union will have at least 1 game on the road. Because remember, the first game, that's not including the playing game, the first series is a best of 3, a home game, an away game. And then whoever was the highest seed, if a 3rd game is necessary, then the highest seed will host that at their home venue. And so it is a fact that the Union will go on the road come playoff time, now that they have clinched a playoff spot. 54% of their games this season, the Union have conceded first. When you look on the road, 80% of their games, 12 out of 15 games, the Union have now conceded first on the road. How concerned are you guys? How concerned are you that this trend continues to happen? 80% of their road games in MLS, they've conceded first. You would think, all right, they would have this corrected by now, but they have not. We are almost done the season, and the Union continue to concede first on the road. Now, if you want to spin it into a positive, with the Union conceding the first goal on the road, they've been able to pick up 9 points when they do that, which is tied for second most in MLS. 2 wins, 7 losses, 3 draws. You want to take it a step further overall? The Union have the most points when you combine home and away when they concede first. 15 points. And it doesn't happen often at home. It's only happened 3 times this season during MLS play at Subaru Park. But it is a concern that the Union continue to concede first on the road. And so is it a positive that this team found a way after being down 2 goals and found a way to get a late penalty, which, by the way, the Union did not deserve that penalty. Terrible defending, terrible awareness by the defender in Charlotte to take down Mbaizo. And I reviewed all the goals plus the Andre Blake saves this time on the YouTube page, youtube.com/freekickpod. A lot of you guys watched the video last time against Cincinnati, so I appreciate you guys checking out that video. A couple more of you have subscribed, so I encourage you guys to subscribe, put on the bell, because what I've been noticing, every time I go and try to watch the video, the bell notification is turned off, so now I don't get notified when I post a video, and I'm sure that's what it's like for all of you guys too. So thank you, as always, for you guys watching YouTube videos, the goals breakdown. But you guys can see exactly what I was talking about if you guys didn't watch this game. Terrible defending by Charlotte. Gifted the Union a point. The Union should have lost this game 2-1. But Charlotte being Charlotte, not a great team, gifted the Philadelphia Union a huge point. And shout out to my guy, Kyle Almany. We were talking this afternoon about just how terrible Charlotte is at conceding late goals. And so he looked up some stats and provided me those stats so I can talk about it on the podcast. In Charlotte's last 4 games, all of them draws, by the way, they've conceded the equalizing goal in the 88th minute or later in 3 out of those 4 games. And in those 4 games, 2 of those equalizers were penalties that they gave up. And so I think it helps the Union that it was Charlotte that they played last night. Because if this is Cincinnati on the road, Nashville on the road, they're not giving you penalties. They're going to put up a lot tougher of a fight. They're not going to let you back into the game. And that's exactly what Charlotte did. And, you know, you still got to play the games. I get that, right? But this Charlotte squad is not good. If I'm a Charlotte fan, just like we were upset, right? We were upset on Saturday that the Union allowed Cincinnati to come back into the game. You guys know how Charlotte fans feel. They had that game wrapped up in the bag, Charlotte, and a stupid challenge later on in this game. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And when you look at the Union, we'll flip it back to them. The Union are 4-8-3 when they're conceding first in MLS play this season. Tied for the most wins. Okay, it's positive. But take it a step further. And you look at the last 8 games for the Union, 6 times they've now conceded on the road in their last 8, with 4 of those being losses. And as we approach playoff time, That feeling does not feel good, right? I mean, I wouldn't feel good about that. You have 2 road games left in Columbus and New England. And that New England game on decision day could be huge. This could be for second place. And I would say the Union have to figure out, how to stop conceding first on the road. But it's too late. It's too late, in my opinion. 80% of their games, they've done this on the road this season, I told you guys. 80%. 12 out of 15 games, they've conceded first on the road. 12 out of 15. It's not good enough. And so, yeah, I would be concerned. I am concerned come playoff time when the Union have to go on the road. I am concerned that they are going to concede the first goal on the road and that it's going to cost them. What if the Union don't get a seed through 1 through 4? And now they're 5, 6, or 7. And yes, you still got to play the best of 3. You lose one on the road. You win it at Subaru Park, and now you got to go back on the road. How do you guys feel? And so it is huge that this team gets a top 4 spot. Currently looking on the standings, they do sit there. 48 points, tied with Columbus, who have played a game more than the Union. You also have Orlando City, who's played 1 extra game from the Union on 50 points. Still have a game in hand on Cincinnati, who, by the way, got a late penalty as well against Montreal to tie that one 1-1. And man, talk about blown opportunities. This Supporters' Shield race could have been a lot closer if the Union would have held on for a win at Subaru Park against Cincinnati. If the Union would have been able to get a win last night in Charlotte, man, this Supporters' Shield is getting a lot closer than people made it out to be. But it's not the way that it happened. Union get 2 points in the last 2 games. Typically, you would take a point on the road. And maybe we should be happy with this point on the road in Charlotte after being down 2 goals. But you should have never got yourself in this situation to begin with. Jim Curtin, like you said, midweek, he was going to rotate his squad. We saw Mbaizo come in for Nate Harriel. We saw Jim rotate the 2 up top. Ty Baribo gets his first start. Chris Donovan gets another start. We see Jesus Bueno get the start this game. Damian Lowe in for Jack Elliott, who was suspended. And I thought 45 minutes, the Union did exactly what Jim Curtin would have wanted. Wanted this team to go into half tied 0-0. Chris Donovan, Ty Baribo, they did their job. And we'll talk about Chris Donovan here in a bit. But that was huge for the Union to go into the half tied 0-0. Because the farther, and I talked about this on Across the Pitch. Thank you to Jose and Mike for having me on their halftime show, literally last minute. They said, hey, you want to come on and talk about your thoughts watching the first half? I said, sure, why not? And I mentioned this, that it was huge for the Union to be tied 0-0, not concede a goal. Because the farther this game goes on in the second half and the game's still tied, Charlotte's going to have to send numbers forward because they are fighting to get into the playoffs. Sitting in 12th place right now. They needed a win last night against the Union. That would have been a huge result for them. And that's where the Union thrive, is when they can hit teams on the counterattack, when they're throwing numbers forward. Because the Union are typically a good transition team. But it doesn't happen. Why doesn't it happen? Because they concede. The first goal, and then the second. Justin Miram, 55th minute. Swiderski, 61st minute. And there is something seriously wrong with the Olivier Mbaizo, Jakob Glesnes right-hand side. Because when you look at those goals conceded last night, on the first goal, Bedoyer's a little bit unfortunate that the ball gets stuck underneath his foot and then Miriam's there to pounce it in. But that second goal, that is ridiculous. It once again came from the Mbaizo Glesnes side. Swiderski runs past Mbaizo, and then he gets in front of Jakob Glesnes, and he has a goal. And I understand Jim feels that he can rotate his right backs between Nate and Olivier Mbaizo, but I think it's pretty clear to me that Nate Herriot and Glesnes work better than Mbaizo and Jakob Glesnes. Because I looked up these stats, because of course I did. When Nate starts in MLS, the Union are 6-3-4. And when Mbaizo starts, the Union are 8-7-3. So 22 points earned when Nate starts and 27 when Mbaizo starts. Nate's only 5 points off. And he started 5 less games than Mbaizo. $22 points when Nate Herriot starts compared to 27 when Mbaizo starts. Nate has played in 5 less games. And I think it's going to be telling down the stretch which right back Jim Curtin prefers in the big games against LAFC, against Columbus, against Nashville, against Atlanta, against New England. And there's going to be rotation for sure. But if I had to bet, the last couple games here, Nate Herriot is going to get more starts in the final 6 games than Olivier Mbaizo. Because for whatever reason, there is zero communication on that side of the field when Mbaizo and Glesnes start. It's happened way too many times. Look at the Toronto game. Look at this game against Charlotte. I feel like it's brain farts every single time. And I don't want to feel like I'm picking on Olivier Mbaizo. And Jim said it earlier in the season, midway through the season, whenever it was. He said it multiple times. He tells Olivier Mbaizo all the time, you have to have more 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 performances than 5 out of 10, 4 out of 10s. And last night was a 4 out of 10 performance. It's more times than not, we see Olivier Mbaizo fall asleep on that right-hand side. There is zero communication between him and Jakob Glesnes. I don't know if Mbaizo is communicating, Glesnes isn't hearing. I don't know. But just looking at the goals, when players run by Mbaizo, when he's ball watching, it's happened too often this season. It's happened too often the last 3 years. And yes, Olivier Mbaizo might want to play in Europe. He may want to be a starter for the Cameroon national team. But when you have those mental mistakes time and time again, teams in Europe aren't going to want you. The national team is not going to be able to rely on you in big games. And so at this point, Olivier Mbaizo is what he is. And I feel a lot more confident playing Nate Herriot in these big games coming up, in the playoffs. Stop getting cute. Stop trying to rotate. There is no debate anymore. Nate Herriot has once again won that right back spot over Olivier Mbaizo. The eye test tells you that. And the stats I just told you, 5 less starts Nate has over Mbaizo. And only 5 points away from tying points earned when Mbaizo starts at 27. Do you guys think I'm off? Do you guys think that Mbaizo's the better player? Offensively, okay, Mbaizo's probably still better, but I don't think it's as close as it was 2 years ago. Defensively, Nate Herriot's a lot better. It always seems like when Nate and Glesnes start, there's better communication on that right-hand side. So yeah, I mean, conceding first on the road, when you have Mbaizo in there, there's constantly mistakes. And I hate to say it, that's going to cost this team in the playoffs. It is what it is. But maybe I'm off. Maybe Mbaizo's not as bad as I'm making him out to be. Maybe it's more on Jakob Glesnes than it is on Olivier Mbaizo. But there is seriously something wrong on that right-hand side. And I talked about it last episode too. This isn't the same defensive team we saw last year. There is something broken defensively about this team. And a big part of that is what's going on the right-hand side of the field. Glesnes hasn't been as great as it was last year. Jack Elliott hasn't been as great as he was last year. The only one on the back line that I think's been better than they were last year is Kai Wagner. Defensively, that is. But as the second half has progressed, I think Kai's got better offensively. We've seen his deliveries on free kicks, on corner kicks, be a lot better than they were in the first half of the season. The Union players are getting on to those corners. Kai Wagner is getting past the first man now. Chris Donovan, header off the post last night against Charlotte. But you got to be a fool to tell me that there's more mistakes when Glesnes and Nate start together on the right side than Mbaizo and Glesnes. Absolutely not. There is a lot more mistakes when Mbaizo's out there. Another thing that I think concerned me last night was there just weren't a lot of touches for the forwards, whether that be Ty and Chris or Julian and Mikel. And you can throw Daniel Gazdag in there too. And so I looked at the last two games against Charlotte, the one last night and then when the Union played on May 31st. Uwa, 31 touches and 71 minutes played. 12 touches and 34 minutes last night against Charlotte. Yes, I know he came off the bench, played a lot less minutes than he did in the first game against Charlotte. Gazdag, 38 touches, 89 minutes played. Last night, 42 touches, 90 minutes played. I had a couple more touches, a little bit more of an involvement last night than he did in the first game. Julian Kranza, 38 touches and 83 minutes played the first game. 18 touches last night in 34 minutes. And as the second half progressed, the longer Carranza and Uwa were on the field, they started to get involved a little bit more. And you saw that on the first goal that the Union scored. The long ball from Jakob Glesnes out wide to Julian Kranza. Good chest down. A nice pass into Quinn Sullivan. Nice give and go. Quinn Sullivan plays Julian down the line. And then Julian cuts the ball back for Quinn Sullivan. Terrific finish by Quinn. But I think I would have liked to have seen the Union's front three get involved a lot more, get more touches on the ball against Charlotte last night. And I asked Jim Curtin after the game, was it something that Charlotte was doing? Or was this the game plan coming in to not get your forwards on the ball as much as we've seen in previous games?
Yeah, Charlotte is a possession based team. They love to have the ball. As you guys have heard me say, we're okay with that. There's some, their head coach comes from Man City, so the ideas of Guardiola, I'll just say, very hard to replicate with without I'll just say the resources that Guardiola has at his disposal. The ideas and the principles are the same as Man City. So you see wing backs coming inside. You see wingers sometimes dropping low. You see deep runs from midfield. So it is unique and difficult to play against because they spread you out. They like to pass the ball. Naturally our forwards aren't going to be involved as much. We're not really a possession team. Occasionally we'll knock the ball around for stretches, but overall we're okay. I'm sure the numbers would say they had probably 60. We probably had 40 to maybe high 30s in terms of possession. But at the end of the day, an ugly point on the road is okay.
And there is no doubt about it. It was an ugly point. A point's a point, but man, against a terrible Charlotte team like this, you would have wanted to see the Union have more fire. You would have loved to have seen them not concede the 2 goals, especially that second goal. Man, I mean, you guys, I'm fired up. Like, that goal should not have happened. Terrible. We could spend another 25 minutes talking about that goal if we wanted to, or every little instance where Mbaizo messes up this season. But we're not going to do that. Jim's right. It was pretty much 60-40 in possession, 58 for Charlotte, 42 for the Union. And again, comparing against the first game against Charlotte, the possession stats were a lot closer that game. 53-47 Charlotte. The long balls in that game, the Union played 76. Last night, the Union played 58. Union had 11 shots the first game, 12 shots last night. And so because the Union saw so little of the ball last night, that means the long balls were going to be down. That means that the touches to the front three were going to be down. Absolutely. But still, there was moments in this game where, especially in the first half, you saw Jesus Bueno multiple times lifting his hands in the air saying, I am in a lot of space on the left. Kai Wagner is pointing out saying, play on the ball. He's in space. And yet the Union wanted to take their time keeping the ball on the right side of the field. But it's like, man, if Charlotte's giving you this space, switch the ball. You got to be quicker. And it doesn't help that Jack McGlynn wasn't out there because he is vital when the Union want to switch the ball. You saw that in the second goal that the Union scored. Beautiful positioning from the Union. The Union went from left to right. McGlynn into Glesnes, Glesnes into Mbaizo, ton of space. And then Quinn and Mbaizo combined well on the right-hand side of the field. And so I think the Union were probably missing a little bit of McGlynn's just vision, his quick passing, his quick decision-making in the first half. But again, the Union did well to get this game 0-0 to go into the half. But yeah, there was definitely missed opportunities in the first half for the Union. And specifically on that left-hand side of the field. Ty Baribo didn't do much. Didn't have a lot of service to work with. Chris Donovan, though, I mean, we can talk about him. Good segue. Fantastic performance last night. 56 minutes played, 12 out of 14 accurate passes, 3 shots, 2 of them on target, 2 chances created, 23 touches, 3 passes into the final third. When I'm wrong, I will admit it. And the last couple episodes, I said, Chris Donovan's not good. He doesn't deserve to be on this team playing in MLS. And I think he's in a weird spot right now in his career where he's too good for MLS Next Pro, but he's not ready for significant minutes in MLS. But last night's performance showed me that, hey, look, this guy maybe does deserve a first-team contract with the Union. A big opportunity given to him last night. Didn't have a ton to work with, but he combined well with his teammates. Good runs. 3 shots, 2 of them on target. Shot 1 off the post. Probably should have had a goal in the first half for sure. But a limited amount of opportunities created to him, just like to Ty Baribo. But Chris really made the most of his opportunities last night. And I asked Jim Curtin, just what I just mentioned to you guys, he combined well with his teammates. Good runs into space. Had a couple shots on target. What do you say to Chris after a game like that?
What Chris gives you is work rate, effort, winning flicks, winning aerials. He's got some decent speed. Now it's the challenge is to, take a deep breath around the goal, slow down when you have that little one-on-one and maybe lift the ball over the goalie or take it by him and dribble the goalie. Maybe he takes you down for a PK. So those are the quality in and around the goal is something that he's still growing. He's what I would call a late bloomer. He developed late in college, so has some good tools. But we have to work with that finishing, the ball striking, even the one that he cuts to his left foot. I actually think he can take another touch because he beat the defender so bad. Instead, he hits a slow roller to the goalkeeper. Get yourself closer. Maybe even can put on your right foot. The header that he has is close. That goes off the bar early. So close, but still has to work on that quality in front of goal.
Yeah, and it'll come with reps for sure in actual game. But staying after, working on that in practice. Not saying that Chris doesn't do that because I've not been able to go to any practice this season with work. But that moment Jim's talking about there where he made the defender look silly, felt a little bit bad because that was Charlotte defender Andrew Privet. And I'm sure to most of you guys that name doesn't mean anything. But for listeners of this podcast that are from Maryland, maybe that should. Calvert Hall's own Andrew Privet played on a club soccer team with a couple of my friends. Grew up 10, 15 minutes down the road from me. Played at Penn State. And Charlotte's had some injuries defensively with their center backs. And so Andrew's got more playing time than he probably would have thought that he would have earned this season. And Chris Donovan did. Absolutely did make him look silly. And unfortunate that Chris wasn't able to capitalize and score on that play. But yeah, it was a good performance by Chris Donovan, and hopefully he can build on this going forward. Hopefully this isn't just a fluke. He's doing well with Union too, but I think, like I said, he's too good for Union too. I don't know how much that helps his development other than consistent playing time. But he needs game time against real competition. And you're not going to get that in MLS Next Pro, and that's why the Union loaned out Brendan Craig. And so I do wonder, will the Union potentially loan out Chris Donovan next season? Now, I do believe that Chris's contract's up after this season. Trying to pull that up right now so I don't look stupid. But I'm pretty sure Chris's contract is up after this year. Yeah, so he just had an option for the 2023 season. He'll have no contract next year unless the Union offer him a new one. So I think the Union probably will. Not an expensive player, not costing you anything against the salary cap. But will the Union say, hey, look, we want you to get significant minutes with maybe a lesser MLS team, let's say a Colorado maybe, and see what you do against actual MLS opponents. But at the same time, if the Union do sell Julian Kranza in the offseason, you're going to need a striker. And I expect the Union to go out and sign a striker. But if they don't, then Chris Donovan, again, like he was for most of the season, your third striker. That's why he's played so much this season. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on what happens with Chris Donovan after the season. But 100% a good game from him last night. And then Quinn Sullivan, I mean, this guy absolutely changed the game when he came off the bench. Jim said after the game that Quinn thinks that his best role in this team is in the midfield, not up top. Jim Curtin thought that that's where Quinn would get most of his time is up top. And Quinn said, no, I'm better in the midfield for this system than I would be up top. And Jim said that's fair. If a player feels more confident playing in one position than the other, you want them to be honest. And so now we have a defined role, even though the diamond doesn't suit Quinn's game, but he gave a spark to this team, a huge spark. Won honors for MLS Team of the Match Day, earned a spot on the bench. So congrats to Quinn. Came on, scored that goal, good link-up play on the right-hand side, and then his pass in Mbaizo that led to the penalty. A good appearance by Quinn Sullivan. We'll see. I mean, a performance like that definitely should earn you more minutes off the bench, you would think, going forward. We'll see what Jim Curtin decides to do in these last 6 games, but I said this on social media. If you go down on goal, you want a player like that brought that energy, that spark that Quinn Sullivan did last night to help you get back into the game come playoff time. And hopefully the Union won't be down at all during the playoffs. But again, we spent 10, 15 minutes talking about how it's an issue the Union keep conceding on the road. So I fully expect the Union to concede on the road. But yeah, really nice game by Quinn. Hopefully he gets more minutes the last 6 games. And I think he can be a difference maker for this team off the bench. As a starter, a spot starter, sure. Relying on him to start week in, week out? Probably not, but that Anthony Fontana El Senior role? Sure, why not? And so that leads me into 3 stars. I already mentioned 2 out of 3 of those. But the only other player that I thought played good for the Union on the night, Andre Blake, 4 saves. Really good performance by Andre Blake in the first half. I believe 3 saves. Mbaizo, by the way, now I'm thinking about it, had the ball taken off of his foot by Conceding. So just not a great game by Olivier Mbaizo. Andre Blake bailed him out with a save in the first half. Really don't want to be dunking on Olivier Mbaizo, but I'm not going to be shy away about mistakes that happen. I'm not going to let it be all cupcakes and rainbows. That's a saying, right? It's not. When you make mistakes, I'm going to call you out. And wasn't the best game by Olivier Mbaizo last night. Wasn't the greatest game overall from the Union. Get a point on the road, and now you look forward to Saturday. So if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow @FreeKickPod, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. And be sure to leave a review, rate the podcast. Really appreciate that. The more reviews, the higher the reviews, the more the podcast gets recommended to people with the different algorithms. So I appreciate you guys that have already done that. And I encourage you guys who haven't yet to do that. And then the YouTube page, youtube.com/freekickpod. Check out the goals breakdown video for this game. And I will give you guys an update. We'll definitely have a podcast episode on Sunday. That's the plan, to record an LAFC review episode. Kyle Omni is going to join me for that podcast. At least that's the plan right now. But I may run into an issue. I'm supposed to fly out on Sunday. And with all this rain and wind they're calling for over the weekend, my plane may get delayed or even canceled. And so if that happens, I'm sending all my recording equipment down with my parents, and then so I don't have to fly with any of that stuff. It'll already be down there when I land. But if my plane gets canceled and my recording equipment's down with my parents, it's going to be difficult to record a podcast. So the plan is that my flight doesn't get delayed, that I'll record the podcast Sunday evening with Kyle. You guys will have another podcast on Monday. And then the Dallas games on Wednesday. Plan on recording that night. Hopefully you guys will have the podcast on Thursday. And that will be your next 2 podcasts. And then maybe a preview episode for Columbus, but don't hold your breath when it's midweek games, because it is extremely difficult to get guests on the podcast when there's games going on during the week. But that is an update I wanted to give you guys. So plan for a podcast on Monday. But if that doesn't happen, that just means that my flight got delayed or canceled and I don't have my recording equipment with me. So let's hope that doesn't happen. Hopefully I see some of you guys this Saturday at the Philadelphia Union LAFC match. It's going to be a huge one. Need the Union to get all 3 points. And hopefully that game doesn't get delayed or canceled either. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.